Today on the Whatsoever Things show, we're privileged to be joined by Pastor Amanda. She shares her testimony, her pity date, working with teenagers, and her favorite topic, trichamaniasis. It's another great show, so here we go. Well, hey there, everyone. Welcome to the Whatsoever Things show, a podcast designed to stimulate your mind, tickle your funny bone, and encourage your faith.
Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things.
This is the Whatsoever Things show, recorded on June 7th, 2021. Talking is a spiritual gift.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Whatsoever Things show, a podcast by a few guys, handful, and a online pastor who's half in, half out of the podcast crew. This week, we thought we'd up the level of our expertise, and we are bringing aboard Pastor Amanda Hahn from the youth pastor.
Hi.
Welcome. So we want to jump right into this. We normally do pleasantries, but we have got to ask you this question.
Okay.
Are you truly an Alabama fan too, or are you
I'm married in.
Okay,
so,
you answered it good enough.
Yeah, growing up, my dad was a Florida Gator fan because we're Florida people, and so we're Florida Gators.
She's smart. What are you looking at me
my
for?
dad spray painted the Florida Gators stuff on his truck and different things. Die hard Gator fan. Growing up as a kid, I didn't care, but then of course I married him, and I'm like,
Wait, what did he say when you brought Daniel around?
Woo, it was hard.
Well, I imagine it
It
went
was
something
hard
like
for
this.
other reasons because Daniel's older than me and everything like that, and of course, you know.
We got that story. That is episode.
So it was definitely different.
I imagine
but...
he was probably something like, "You're not his cousin. Y'all can't get married."
Okay, true story though. Okay, my maiden name is Goodson. Okay, Amanda Goodson. That's my maiden name. My parents, they're Goodson. Well, my parents divorced, and so my dad ended up getting remarried to a lady whose maiden name was Goodson. And I'm like, "Are y'all cousins?" And Granny's like, "There's no relation." So I'm like, "Sure there is, Granny, at least you're fixed." So I don't know, but how that happened.
Wow.
So who knows? But I didn't think anybody else would marry my daddy, but they did. So of course,
I'm in the same
Mom,
boat.
she had to take her
Cut that
maiden
out.
name, which was Holland, and then her first boyfriend after my dad, which they were together for a while, but he was a Holland, and that was really weird. And I'm like, this is the weirdest stuff.
So you were born to be an Alabama fan. You just weren't an Alabama fan. Is that what we're getting at here?
I don't know. Pensacola's right there by the border, so.
It's making me think, what if I married Rumor Willis? Then she would be Rumor. Right. I like that. Okay.
What?
We can cut that out, right? No, I'm just kidding.
Do you know who Rumor Willis is?
No.
Bruce Willis's daughter. She's in movies.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
We missed it.
You
I
guys
thought that was like
reference
some
movies I've
high
never
school
heard of.
person.
You guys needed to see the eyebrow raise.
You're just not into that there TikTok. Speaking of that, Pastor Amanda,
So you preach on TikTok?
No.
I don't know how you deal with youth with all of the things they have.
Yes, I love teenagers though because little kids, they have snot and they're still potty training and their shoelaces are untied all the time. Yep. And I substitute teach because why not? I torture myself, but I love it. And I'd substitute at the elementary school only when they need it. I like to do the middle high school, but last year right before spring break, literally it was the Friday before spring break before COVID, and I substituted half a day in Zoe's class, which that should have been my first clue not to do it. And this little kid, and this is kindergartners, they come up and they're like literally poking themselves in the eye, and they're like, "It hurts. It hurts when I do this." And I'm like, don't do it. Don't poke yourself in the eye, And I'm just sitting here like, how do these teachers do this all day long? And this other kid like literally poked themselves in the eye, and then they started crying, and I'm like, well, don't poke yourself. And like all the kids are poking themselves in the eyes, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like, I don't understand. But teenagers, I love teenagers because you can have conversations with them, and though they think they're so grown, they really ain't grown. And so I don't know. I thrive with teenagers. I love how ridiculous they are.
Mm-hmm. And you, outside of your husband's ability to be a techno, but would you, if you were not married to online pastor Daniel Hahn, would you be able to keep up with all the technology of today's youth?
I mean, I don't keep up with much of it as it is. Like, I don't do all the trending stuff. I have to do Instagram because the teenagers, that's where they're at. But I'm not like an influencer. That's what they call themselves right now, because I can care less. Like, if you don't like me, I don't care. But TikTok, I don't do any TikToks. I just watch them because they're entertaining. And I'll sit there and watch them for like an hour a day just because they're hilarious. And the teenagers, they think it's funny. But basically, I don't do Snapchat. I don't do, what's another one that they do that I don't do? Because I just don't see it's relevant. Besides, they have their spam accounts and they hide me anyways. They hide the adults. Like, they'll have 12 accounts and they'll have all these spam accounts, and they'll have the one spam account they'll let you see because it's not the really bad spam account. But then they'll have the bad spam account where it's like there's stuff that nobody sees except like they're really close. So it's just kind of.
You lost me already.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know about this Snap Talk or Tick Chat thing. Sounds confusing.
What about MySpace? You know about MySpace?
I did know about MySpace.
How about LiveJournal? Let's go back further.
I don't even know LiveJournal.
LiveJournal is before MySpace. So going back to your tech question, I humor Daniel with his tech stuff, but honestly, as you can see here on the podcast, y'all can't see, but the men sitting here see, I have a physical planner in front of me, and I literally write down everything, and everything's color coded because that's who I am, and I take notes.
Is that there one of those LGBT things? Oh,
No,
different rainbow colors.
It's rainbow. Looks like a kid's.
You are.
Mine has colors too.
But see, Daniel's all like, you should try this app. And I'm like, I don't want to try this app. This works for me.
You
Leave
are
me alone.
exactly like my wife.
She has 4 different colors.
Oh,
in
no,
the
I have
same...
more than that. No, so like the lime green is one job, the gray's one job, the school blue is school stuff, and then this is Amplify blue. Red is church
Oh,
related.
there's 2 kinds of blue.
Yeah, there's Amplify blue, and then there's school Wildwood blue, and then there's Busch Garden. No, just kidding. Yeah. So everything has a different color, and in my head it works.
See, every year
It doesn't matter to you if it don't work. This is my planner.
Every year when Erin needs a new planner, because hers is just like that. I'm telling you, I won't go with her anymore. It's an all-day process at looking at every planner.
It took her weeks.
Yeah.
It did. See, my aunt gifted me this. It's a Christian planner, and actually has scriptures on it and place for you to put your sermon notes and different things like that, and like your devotions and stuff. And they get expensive if you get like the higher end ones. But she bought it for me a gift, and this was 2020, and I'm like, this is too big. I'm not gonna like this at all because I don't want this bulky thing. Well, I ended up loving it, and then Ronald and Skylar were like, we want mine. So for 2021, for their graduation going away, I bought them 2021. And Ronald, he's just like me. He has all of his and color coded.
Does he have different color pens
Yes,
too?
he does.
Does he put hearts over the eyes?
Yeah, well, maybe. Ronald's, But anyhow, so this is my thing. I like it. And then staff meeting, they make fun of me, but I'm the note taker. If you have questions, let's go back to the notes, because half the time these men don't understand or remember anything they said. So
I resemble that remark.
Whoa, hitting the
I'm just saying,
card.
they'll be like, what do we start at staff meeting? And I'm like, let's flip back to the notes, shall we? Well, you said this, and you said this, and da-da-da.
That reminds me, the other day, my wife come at me, and she was like, you weren't even listening, were you? And I was like, that is such a weird way to start a conversation. How do you just come out of left field with that? You women are weird.
Good one, Thomas.
You women are weird.
But yeah.
And so, to get us back on track,
I love it. Mike's like, and so.
we are talking about youth, pastor, and you're able to, we welcome you to provide your testimony on this podcast, but kind of give us a background to how you came to Oxford Assembly of God.
Well, I'm a bus kid, so my parents didn't go to church except for when it was Christmas or Easter, or when like things got really bad, they would go to church thinking that God would fix their problems, and then they'll go for a few weeks, and then they would stop going. And there was certain places that they would go, but there was one predominant church that they were pretty much a part of. But
Because it was a quarter mile away.
yeah, it was right up the road. And in Pensacola, all the churches, like you'll kind of notice the pattern, but like people will stay at one church for like 10 years, and there'll be like a church split, and then they all go to the next church. They all follow. It's kind of like this one family. So my family kind of got on that bandwagon. So my childhood revolved around one church. And that church has since then imploded, sadly. But it's definitely something where didn't have a heritage in church. And so 7th grade is roughly when I remember my grandmother became a Friends teacher for like missionettes, back when missionettes and Friends is the middle school girls class. And you had little purple binders and little charm necklaces, and that was it instead of badges.
Purple planner, purple binder.
Yeah, yeah.
It all comes
And
back
it's
full
all
circle.
yes, it is. And so I really wanted to go because my grandma was a teacher, and you got a purple binder. And I started going. Then Gurney stopped teaching, but I stayed. The pastor's son, who was in school with me, he's like, come to youth. And I'm like, youth is really for high schoolers, because our church structure, the high school youth was the same time as Wednesday night missionettes and Royal Rangers.
Okay.
So missionettes and Royal Rangers ended at middle school. They didn't have in high school. So then basically after you got out of middle school, you went to youth. Technically, you could have gone to youth as like a 7th or 8th grader, but not many did.
Yes.
And so I felt out of place. So I said, I'm going to wait until I'm in 9th grade. So 9th grade, I started going to youth and just kind of got plugged in. And the youth pastor, I remember the first trip I went on, we went up to the mountains on a retreat up in Tennessee, and that was a lot of fun. But I remember coming back, and the youth pastor's like, okay, you need to start coming on Sunday mornings. And I'm like, huh? He's like, you come already for youth on Wednesdays. You need to start coming on Sunday mornings. And then I was like, okay. So I started going on Sunday mornings. And then after like about a month of that or whatever, he was like, all right, you need to start coming for Sunday school. Just come an extra hour early and come for Sunday school. And I'm like, huh? Okay. So then it was like, hell, we have Sunday nights and you got to come on Sunday nights. And I was like, what? And so before you know it, I was at the church every time the doors are open. And then he was like, we have a drama team. You should join the drama team. And I'm thinking like theater, because I was in theater in school. And I remember walking in to practice, and they're doing like, it's human videos is what we know it, but it was the weirdest thing. I'm like, what in the world are they doing? They're like got Tourette's, and they're just like thrilled. What is going on? Music's happening, and they're just throwing their bodies. And I'm like, what is this? He's like, these are human videos. And I'm like,
Oh, not interpretive dance?
no, this is human videos. No. And I'm just like, okay. And he goes, just act out to the song. And I'm like, I don't even know the song. I don't listen to this Christian music, you know? So it was definitely a culture shock, but I got thrown in. And I'm very thankful for my youth pastor, you know, Chris and his wife, Alicia, because they really poured into me, and they saw, you know, my hunger for something. And so 10th grade was about the time I felt God calling me into like, you know, like this is what your life's going to be about, ministry. And so I went to church faithfully. I was the church princess. That's the only way I know how to describe it, because all the church grandmas loved me, and the, you know, crazy uncles, they all loved me. I mean, I was getting Pentecostal handshakes all the time to go on trips, and I mean, that was just how it was. And so my junior year, the very end, I was 17, and my youth pastor's wife was like, I see the sparks. I'm like, huh? She's like, yeah, I see the sparks between you and Daniel. I'm like, ew, no, he's old and gross. That's disgusting.
Hold on. He was also your youth pastor.
No, he was not my youth pastor, but he was a youth leader, which we don't encourage that by no means.
Sorry.
But he was old and gross.
But he was old and gross. And so she's like, well, he really likes you. And I had to sit there and go, that's disgusting, because I am 17 years old. And what was he talk about me? And she's like, all the time. And I'm like, y'all have problems.
You
Y'all
were
need
the
to figure
princess,
this.
though. You were the star.
I really was.
Athlete
And so
of the.
That's an odd shade of red for you, Daniel.
Yeah, I think Daniel needs to
just
defend himself.
I think pale white
commercial
is
break.
better.
So we and this is good because we get to see your side of the story Daniel told us.
My version was a little different.
Yeah.
well, okay. So the next day he calls me and he's like, hi, mind you, I'm driving in the car and my sister's in the passenger seat. We just got back from school, and he's like, do you want to go out? And of course, I'm saying yes, but like really, I'm like banging my head on the steering wheel going no. But I'm like, sure, yeah, we'll go out Saturday, yay. And so it was totally a pity date. So Saturday was a pity date, and he's all like, I'll wait forever for you. And he keeps saying he never said that, but I don't lie. So anyhow, he kept saying like I was this great woman of God that he wanted to get to know. But I will have to tell you, because my family were gambling addicts. My parents were, so they were never home. So even though I was 17, I was really like a 35-year-old trapped in a 17-year-old body, because I'm the oldest. I had to raise my brother and sister and literally do everything. My parents just weren't around very much. And so I was very mature for a 17-year-old. I would never encourage a 17-year-old to get engaged. Just going to say that. But our story was a little bit different.
So do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, our story was a little different. When you show me a life that's like what some of these other people deal with, where they're having to like be adults at 17, then we could talk. But these kids have no idea.
Adulting. Oof.
True story. We've had a student one time. They turned 18, and they turned 18 in October, but they're still in high school. And they were telling the other students, "You have to call me Miss now." And I'm like, "No, they don't, because you don't pay your own bills. You live with your parents, and you're still in high school. You're not grown. Just because you're 18 don't mean you're grown." They're still not grown.
Until you're calling for your own doctor appointment. Because I was like in my 20s where I did that. I was like, you know what I mean? I was still like pawning that off. I was paying my own bills. I was pawning that on somebody else. I ain't calling a doctor.
Yeah.
It's
so
weird.
Well, as you see, we obviously got married because we went on more than one date. We went on more than one date. But really, going back to so we dated my entire summer of my junior year. Going into my senior year, I'm applying for Southeastern because that's where I knew I was going to go, Southeastern University.
You want to go to Pensacola Baptist College?
No, I would get kicked out. And it's not accredited. Why would I want to waste my money on something that's not accredited? Hey. But so I wanted to run away as far as I could from my parents. That's a true story, though. I told my parents, I'm turning 18, I'm gone. Peace. And so he's like, "Well, what about us?" I'm like, "What about us?"
He's like, "There's a Radio Shack in every town."
I'm going to Southeastern. He's like, "Well, I'm not going to uproot my life and move all the way to Lakeland if we're not married, because I mean, if we're just dating, and what happens if you get down there, then things change." I'm like, "Well, we have two options. We break up now, we get married, but I'm going to Southeastern. I don't know about you." And so we prayed about it for about a month, of course, and then he, of course, asked me, which wasn't no surprise. But so I was engaged almost my entire senior year of high school. Again, we don't like to tell that to the students most of the time unless they figure it out when they start doing math. But I tutor math, so they don't figure it out. And so I was engaged my entire senior year. So May I graduated, July we married, August I started at Southeastern, and then I got done at Southeastern in 3 years and got my degree, and pretty much have just been following where God takes us. So
did you know they had a riot over food?
Yes. Okay. Actually, I know the person who started it.
Miss Marcia?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'm talking about a recent riot.
Oh,
You talking
no.
about an old riot with Marcia's riot?
We were up to
No. There's been a new riot that
happened
since COVID. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So apparently somebody got raw chicken from Chartwell's, which isn't, and that's the cafeteria, and they posted it, and it's now this huge, well, it's now blown over, but it was huge, and this kid, and I knew the kid who got the raw chicken and made the post, and so then it was all blown up over they're serving us raw chicken and and the kids got crazy and stuff like that. But
those kids are gonna go be missionary in some third world country where they eat raw chicken every day.
Right.
Might as well get used to it now.
Yeah, you try to eat the chicken they serve you in Cuba that's cooked over a rim. With what wood? There's no wood around.
Did they at least put oil on the rim, or
I don't know. Just spice it
cooking
up more.
oil, not car oil.
And Oxford, how did you get to Oxford Assembly of God Church?
Well, Daniel and I were youth pastors in Georgia for a couple of years. I mean, obviously he was the youth pastor. I had to work full time as a bookkeeper in an accounting office. But the pastor that hired us had told us when he interviewed us that he had cancer and that he was going to start chemo. And sadly, within the year, he had died. But he was in his 60s, and he had stage 4 melanoma. But the new pastor came in, and just differences.
Yeah.
That's how it typically happens when there's change. There's, always some differences and stuff like that. Nothing bad. Just we didn't mesh. So we applied several places. We actually flew to Arkansas. That was a cool church. When we looked at. Yeah, where was it at, honey? I don't remember. I don't remember. It was somewhere in Arkansas outside of Little Rock, like an hour from Little Rock. That was neat, but we just didn't feel God calling us there. And plus, I was scared of the tornadoes, and that's a fear of mine, tornadoes.
Get a Frady hoe.
Get a what?
A Frady hoe. All my family lives in Arkansas, and they have Frady hoes. It's a hole in the ground.
I thought
and they
you
go,
said
and when,
something else.
When they're afraid.
When they get a Frady, they run down into the hole, and it's a Frady hole.
Okay.
A storm shelter is what we
It's
call
a storm shelter, yeah. But because of their accent, it just always comes out as Frady hole because they're a Frady.
Well, I'm scared of tornadoes. I don't know why I have this irrational fear of tornadoes, but I sure do. I watch some scary movies with tornadoes in them, but I can't. And I'm scared of sharks. And when they came out with Sharknado, it was over.
Those were the best. All
I never
17
watch
of them
it,
were
but
fantastic.
It's over.
They got another one where they melt from the snow, avalanche nado or something.
Yeah,
And it
to
says
watch it.
Our ice is just frozen water. The science is sound.
I have a recurring nightmare with tornadoes. And teeth falling out. I'm told that's an interpretation for something. Like I don't know why I freak out. My teeth are gonna fall out. I'm just like.
So you followed your husband here, obviously.
Yeah, I followed my husband here. So we obviously interviewed. That interview was quite interesting. But I don't know if Daniel shared that one, but that was interesting. And but we got here, and of course
I was on the interview. I don't remember anything interesting.
The actual phone call with Pastor was.
Okay.
Yeah, the phone call with Pastor was because Daniel
You were a
called
board member
literally.
back then?
Yeah, he's been
Holy
working for
cow.
ancient days, you know.
I said, who can deal with our youth? And I saw the goatee, and I was like, that man can.
That's right. I remember.
But it was long.
And he had spiky hair in
When
the
y'all
pictures.
when y'all first came, y'all came to Sunday school, remember? And Mike was teaching back then.
Mhm,
And nobody
I remember
said
that.
anything. And then Daniel talked for a little while.
Yeah.
Mike's like, hire that guy. We need to hire this guy.
Well, he and I have always been a team in everything that we do. But like y'all joked around beforehand, they always hire the men. And us women had to work outside the church folk, you know. So I've actually been very blessed because the opportunities to work in the accounting field has helped me a lot to learn a lot about the business world of things. Because a lot of people don't realize the business that goes into churches and the fact that it takes a lot more than just people paying tithes. I mean, you've got to plan it out and stuff. So being at an accounting firm, technically for 8 years, has actually taught me well. Now, Pastor asked me tax law all the time. I said, well, I ain't with it anymore. I haven't worked in an accounting firm since 2017, so I don't know.
That reminds me, I got to ask you some questions after the podcast.
I can't guarantee that I know the answers.
Are you up on cryptocurrency accounting laws?
Hey,
Yeah,
since
no,
he brought it up.
Since he brought it up.
I don't stay
How
current
exactly
with that
do you do a
stuff.
Pentecostal handshake with Bitcoin? I need to figure out.
Yeah, I don't keep up with that stuff.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for telling us that. And let's roll right into more of your background because this is fascinating. Are you ready to tell us your salvation story?
So I don't have
Cliff's Notes version?
I don't have like a particular moment like my
Oh,
grandma
that's
said to me
exactly
that-
what her husband said. Oh, my.
I don't have a moment. My family likes to say they're church people, but they really didn't have like a good strong church background. They really, even my grandparents and stuff, they may have went to church when they were younger, but they didn't really have like a good biblical background. I probably got saved 1,000 times as a kid, because you say that prayer.
That's it?
I
Those are
mean,
rookie numbers.
you
Yeah, bump
you always
those
say the
numbers up.
prayer. Now lay me
That's
before
one.
I sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I die before I wake, pray the Lord my soul to take. You always pray
Really?
these
That's
things.
what you would say? I would pray before you go to bed?
That was the prayer we always say. You didn't learn that prayer?
I mean,
now
I
lay
learned
me
it from,
down to
from
sleep.
Metallica, but I didn't learn it from anybody else.
Oh my gosh. So, yeah, that song we sang all the time, or we prayed all the time. And so I don't really have a particular moment where God was like, oh, you're saved. And so I just felt this calling, and I really do feel like it was something that was done over time because I felt the draw to be something more. I felt the draw to come to church. Like I said, I was a bus kid. We didn't have a physical bus, but I felt the draw to go to church. I felt like that was where I needed to be. And so though my parents taught me right and wrong and God and the devil and that kind of stuff, it wasn't really until I got involved in a youth group that I really understood what it meant to actually have a relationship with God and how to learn. And actually, my youth pastor and I talked about this before, but he was still doing a lot of things. He was really event focused and less discipleship focused, and he shared this with me that like he felt that he didn't do a good enough job with the discipleship part of things, like teaching us how to read the Bible, or at least like actually taking the time and studying and stuff. So I tell the teenagers that like that's a struggle for me even now as a 30-something-year-old woman, because like I wasn't taught. And at Southeastern, I'm all like, oh my gosh, what happened? I hear at this Bible college, and you got these little church kids who they knew all these stories, so they're like passed out asleep, and I'm like, David did what? And I'm writing down all these notes like frantically because I really didn't know this stuff. And so I mean, I just, like I said, I felt this calling. Now I will say God's like confirmation in my life was when I was on a missions trip to the Dominican Republic. It was the summer before my senior year. I was 17, and a youth pastor on
It
the
was a pretty
trip.
eventful year for you, wasn't it?
It was.
There's a lot
Summer
of
of
things that
17?
Yeah.
I wasn't on this trip, by the way.
He wasn't on the trip. No, I was actually like.
Let me
really
ask you this, though.
scared.
Going into it, that South American country, did you know that if you play a game and you lose, you're not supposed to buy the losers a drink?
No. I didn't
Okay,
know that.
well,
Yeah, only winners get sodas.
But if you did know that, would you still buy the losers a Coke?
if I didn't even know where a Coke was,
Okay.
sure.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
they kept us very sheltered. Remember,
Okay.
we were kids, we were teenagers, we weren't adults, so it's a little different.
Your husband was pushing communist propaganda in Central
Yes.
America, so I just
Just
want to
thought that was
okay.
a basic.
Well,
That episode will come out soon.
make sure.
well,
Well,
we
by the
had,
time they hear this one, that episode will have come out a long time ago.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we were in the middle of a cow field, and a youth pastor, not mine, but he was on the trip, and he come up to me, and he's like, his name was Darian, right? Damien. What was his name? Damien?
He's like, yo, I know you're Daniel's girl, but.
Actually, he knew Daniel. He knew. I don't know how did you know Damien? I can't even remember, but he knew
He
Damien.
was youth pastor about 10 miles up the road from where I was a youth pastor.
Oh, so they knew each other.
I know.
But anywho, so he's like, God wanted me to tell you this verse. I can't remember where it's at, but God wanted me to tell you that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can understand what God has in store for those who love him. He said, God wanted me to tell you that if you love him, that, you know, he will guide you and, you know, he'll take care of you. And just the sky's the limit. There's just no telling what's going to happen. And I frantically looked for the verse, and of course I found it's 1 Corinthians 2:9, and that's my life verse. I say that to myself all the time, and I tell that to the teenagers, and I write it in their graduation cards. You know, 1 Corinthians 2:9. Put that down, Thomas. Make sure you get it right. Corinthians, COR.
I just put COR.
But yeah, it's good.
I don't need to spell it out.
And but that's my life verse, and like literally, I just felt like that was God's confirmation that everything I was doing and the direction I was going into ministry was it. And of course, Daniel and I weren't engaged or anything at that point, but yeah. So it was just it was my journey, not ours.
That was kind of like how mine was a series of steps, confirmations, just like it's time type
Right.
of a deal. Okay. I see. Any questions for
So
the
when you
youth?
like you're in youth now, and you've got you two are the most organized people I've ever seen ever. But what's missing? Like, what do you think is the next step? What does youth in the United States, churches in the United States, need to do in a youth? I don't know how I'm saying this question.
How
You
do,
know what
how
I
do we
mean?
reach more youth?
Yeah,
maybe?
I know that's typical.
You guys are closer to the.
But like
the
you
pulse.
know, there's something missing, something that's got to get.
Well,
Maybe
the
I'm off.
problem is that, well, there's a couple of things that I see. A, people are looking for authenticity. You know, students, teenagers are looking for authenticity. So, like, I feel like my age is the sweet spot right now. Like, when I'm in the schools, I love being in the schools. And when I'm in the schools, I don't care if you think I'm cool or not. Like, I don't try to look like you. I don't try to, you know, wear the coolest shoes or the coolest jeans or whatever. I actually had a girl one time, she's like, Miss Amanda, what are you wearing? I'm like, I don't care, baby. I look fine. Just you go about you. You do you, boo.
I agree.
And, and so, but they just want to know somebody cares about them. Like, they legitimately want to know that somebody cares about them. And right now, we are railing against, like, the culture that's trying to say the church is bad. And so they're trying to say that the church is judgmental or the church is this. And sadly, somebody I know, a grown up, but they got a letter from a church just basically saying, you know, we see you on Facebook that you're living in sin and da-da-da-da-da.
Really?
We
From
wanna
the church?
Yeah, it's a local church. I felt really bad. And so what that did is, that could push her away, but thankfully that person actually was in church Sunday at a different church. But they post it on social media, so now everybody sees it. So they're gonna look at that church and go, that church is a bad church. But they also look at the church in general and think, those are them judgmental Christians, you know. And so it's like we're hurting ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I'm dealing with so many Christians that are like, are they genuine or not, you know? And that's what the students are asking, or are you genuine or not? They can care less about what the Bible says if they don't believe it, but they want to know whether or not you believe it. You know, they want to know if you're living it.
Before they'll even consider
Right.
it.
And sadly, what's going on right now, and we're seeing a lot of, the world is taking scriptures and taking like one or two words out of a verse to make it fit what they need it to say. And then that's where the students are throwing it in your face. And I'm like, that's not what it means, or that's not what it says. And then they're like, well, you're just judgmental and da-da-da-da. So it's hard, but you can't have that conversation with somebody
It's funny
that
how
you
they'll
don't
just-
have a relationship
It's funny how
with.
they judge you, and then when you start to say something, they're like, "Oh, you're judgmental."
Right. So
Like,
like
wait a
you've got to
minute.
have the relationship first. And so like I feel like my role in the schools, though I wish our gym was full of teenagers, and I'm still working on it because I feel like
It's pretty full.
nah, it needs to be fuller. And like I mean, because COVID messed up everything. We had a really good momentum pre-COVID, but I'm in these schools, and like I was telling Pastor the other day, you know, these kids know that they can come here if they ever have a problem. I want them to come here on a regular basis and really get to know Jesus and have a relationship and be authentically changed. But they know that there's genuine people here. there's genuine people that will actually care for them and so forth. And so that's like the thing that I think most teenagers are looking for. Plus the label thing. A lot of people put labels on kids and say, oh, they're the bad kid. Oh, they have tattoos, so they must have a rough life because their parents aren't around and they don't care, you know. And I'm just sitting here like, just because they have a label.
That little piece is getting like kind of worked out though, because there's so many people now. We're just talking about tattoos. There's like just everybody. I know more people that have tattoos than don't.
Yeah. I mean, that's just one example.
Yes,
like,
yes, I
people,
agree.
they label in general, you know, and so it's just sad. And we're all guilty of it, let's be honest. I mean, everybody in this table, we probably labeled somebody today, not even realizing that we labeled somebody. But sadly, people see the church putting labels and like making it like a judgmental kind of thing. And my thing is like these kids need to understand that Jesus will rip those labels off and say your label's now child of God, or you know, you're my adopted child, or you know, you're forgiven, you're chosen, all these kind of things. Because what was my label before Jesus? I mean, I came from a broken family. I didn't have a rich church heritage, so I can't imagine what people thought about me. My family was a well-known family because we had a family business, and so people knew my family, and they could just put the label of what they knew of my family on me, you know. Which Daniel, yeah. Oh, but talking is a spiritual gift, honey. You don't have it. But it is definitely something that I just think about what God can do. And I look at scriptures, and while you look at my notes and everything, this was something that Pastor Ontario Green said, but he goes, look for the Davids. If you actually go look at David's anointing story in 1 Samuel 16, Samuel goes to Jesse's house, and basically they're getting all ready for the ceremony, and it's all his current sons. Like, they totally forgot about David out in the field. Like, they weren't even thinking about David. And David was the youngest, and people discredit the young people. Like, they can't do nothing. Well, David was the one who was anointed. Okay. Then they think that, well, he's the forgotten one. Like, literally, Jesse wasn't even thinking about it. He's putting all of his sons before Samuel, and Samuel's like, Lord, that one? God's like, nope. And finally he's like, you got any more kids? Because these aren't it. And he's like, oh yeah, I do got the one. He's out there serving. So a lot of times you got to look for the ones who are serving. So many times people that are serving are the ones that are not looked at, because they're just kind of in the midst working, but you know, they're not looking at the servant's heart. And then of course
you don't see them as they're on the way to the trash can with
right
cleaning
you're
up.
working your little tail off. But just look for the Davids. And so like that message from Ontario Green, he did a great job, way better than what I'm doing at the moment, but just really stuck with me about how can we find the Davids that people want to forget about or not think that are actually going to amount to anything, or isn't going to be able to do anything because they're too young. So, like in the schools, I like to look for the Davids. You know, we have a lot of ESC children that are in the schools and are in our youth group. And, like, a lot of times that's a label. We say, oh, you're ESC. And therefore, you're not capable of something because you're ESC.
Yeah.
And that's not true either. They're plenty capable. You just have to find it.
I was a ESC kid.
Did you have an IEP?
I don't know what that is, but I was in ESC classes, and I worked my butt off to graduate with a standard diploma.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's interesting you bring up being authentic kind of people, because I remember when I was in youth and we would go to these youth events and they'd have some speaker, and in my day they would be wearing Jinko jeans and like,
oh, I remember those.
and they
I
were
never
like,
wore any, but
Jesus is radical, kids. And it's like, you are not authentic.
Hello, fellow youth.
And it's somebody who's like in their 50s and they're trying to dress like teenagers and they're trying to be, and it wasn't authentic. And I never listened to anything they said. And it's interesting that you say that. Do you think that people still do that? Like youth pastors?
absolutely. Like there's a stereotype youth pastor look. Like you can just,
Do you think they're being authentic in it though? Like that's just how they are?
I struggle with this, and I've told Pastor, I've had these conversations with him. I said, Pastor, I never want to be that person that's going to go into a room of youth pastors and be like, my shoes are $200. I have a 2-story, 5,000 square foot house, and it's got a pool and da-da-da-da, because so many times that's what we're doing, and they're trying to do that because they think it's what's attractive, and then like, oh, well, we have all these Instagram followers and da-da-da-da-da, and that's just not, like, I don't want to be that person. Like, I just want to be authentic. I mean, y'all know I am jeans and a t-shirt and no makeup, and that's okay with me. And it's not that makeup's a problem, not that dressing up's a problem. I just don't like that, and I don't want to try to be something that I'm not. just because teenagers are maybe attracted to it. You know, I want to be authentic for them to say, hey, that she's real. But I also want to be authentic with the Word of God so they know, hey, she's real. You know, I don't want to like compromise anything in the schools to try to be cool or to say something or do something. The kids know me as a church lady in the school. And though that sounds kind of degrading, it's not. They actually respect.
Put your hair in a bun. And...
Yeah. They're like, and because I'll have a kid that'll drop the F-bomb in class, which they should do, obviously. And I always tell them, don't disrespect my kindness. You know, if you disrespect my kindness, then you're going to see a whole nother side of me. And one kid will say like the F-bomb, and then before I even have to say anything, I've got another kid, whoa, we don't do that in here. She's a pastor. She's the church lady, you know. And it's just so funny because I don't even have to like defend myself because the students
sound
defend,
like Pauly Shore there,
you know. And, well, and I'm just like, okay, and so they know who I am and what I represent. So,
but also because I'll have people that will do that with me at work, where somebody will be like, oh, he doesn't like to listen. I'm like, listen, I don't like to listen to it. I'm not the one that judges you.
Right.
So whether you say it in front of me or not really doesn't matter. Like, I don't want to hear it, but somebody else hears it all the time.
Well, in the school system, they could get written up for cussing.
Yeah.
I just don't have that authority as a substitute. I
Yeah.
get paid to make sure they don't kill each other. That's it.
I'm just saying when they're like, oh, don't do it in front of him. Like, no, I don't want to hear it. But I'm not the one you need to be
Right.
worrying about not saying it in front
You're
of.
a substitute at the middle high school.
I love it.
Oh my god! That just hit me. You were like, I don't know. When we were kids, we always
So I
played
have
pranks
two
on
jobs in the
sub.
schools. One job is a substitute, and I do that just because when COVID hit, I couldn't go as a volunteer. I used to volunteer all the time, and Pastor would encourage us to go like once a week and volunteer because that's just an in the schools. And COVID hit, couldn't be a volunteer, so I was a substitute, and that was my in. I worked one day a week being a sub. Well, I have another job, which kind of happened at the same time. This is all pre me getting hired full time, but the other job is teaching sex ed. I love teaching sex ed. I'm like, trichamaniasis. And they're like, ew, what is that? I'm like, it's pubic lice. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting. And I'm just like, and it's in long eyelashes. And they're like, how do they trichamaniasis get in eyelashes? And I'm like, it's because your face is where it doesn't belong, honey. That's all I'm going to say.
Excuse me while I go throw up.
But see, I have no problem talking about that. So I love talking about that. And I do it very well. Yeah, trichomoniasis. STDs. Did you know HPV is the leading cause of throat cancer? Put that together.
I don't want to know. I don't need to know.
Kids are like, they're sitting there. Oh, and we talk about human trafficking, which actually is a very important topic. And I love talking about human trafficking in the schools to really put it in, like out there for them to understand. Florida is number 3 in the country for human trafficking victims. And these kids are blown away because they have no idea. And I love it. I love talking about it, and that opens up doors. They changed the program from a 5-week program to a 12-week program, so I was in the same class with the same kids for 12 weeks, which is amazing because I built so many good relationships with those kids. And so when my last day was there, and this was in April, one of the girls, she was like, this is your last day, Miss Amanda? And I said, yes, sweetie. I said, it's okay, I'll still be around, I'm subbing, but no, we want you to teach us. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm done, 12 and done, that's how it is, but yeah.
So what was the best prank that you had pulled on you? Because we used to pull pranks on subs all the time. Like,
honestly, there's not a lot of pranks going on.
what? These kids.
Yeah, they're losers.
But well, they all had. Okay, so
Nobody pulled a
so
fire
this is what
alarm or
happens.
anything?
Oh no. This is what happens. They as a sub, I'm not allowed to deny bathroom breaks, and they know that. I don't advertise that. So they're like, I need to go to the bathroom, and I'm like, okay. And I said, you're on the clock, and I'll say it out loud. Okay, you're on the clock. Let's go. It should take you about 4 minutes. The bathroom's right around the corner. Don't you go take 10 minutes to go vaping or doing something you shouldn't be doing. And so when they're gone for 20 minutes because they've been skipping, I'll make a big old scene when they come back in. I'm like, did that poop hurt? Are you okay? Like,
There it
because
is.
like you
That's
seriously.
I knew it was coming
And
sometime
so-
in this podcast.
I do. And they're like, what? I'm like, well, you were gone for 20 minutes. No, I wasn't. I said, baby, I've been clocking you. You've been gone for 20 minutes. I said, everybody, is he okay? You know, and so that pretty much stops that.
That's good.
But no, they don't. They just roam campus. It drives me nuts. They just constantly roam campus. Like, they just, I gotta go to the bathroom. They ain't even going to the bathroom. They're doing whatever they want. It drives me crazy. So they don't really have to do pranks because they just leave.
There's no smoking in the bathrooms anymore. It's all vaping now.
Most of it's vaping or pot. You could tell the pot kids. Whew, they
Okay,
stink.
well, I guess some things don't change.
But there's a lot of vaping.
Everyone chill out. She's the church lady, bro.
You know the pot kids, though. You can smell them. You're like, okay. But the vaping, you can't really smell the vaping, so that's what's so hard. And, like, I had a student the other day tell me, Miss Min, I walked in the bathroom, there was, like, a total vape fest going on, and I'm like, doesn't surprise me. But the only way to stop that is, like, putting an adult in the bathroom, like, all day long. At every single bathroom. I
cannot.
I always look at Mike, 'cause he usually gets us back on track.
Well, in Rangers, I worked with the 3rd through 5th graders. I don't think I can't handle the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that much.
Sixth graders are totally
they make comments, and I can't. And I'll read a comment that I read that if this was
on Facebook or something?
Well, this is a Facebook comment to somebody else, a guy I watch every now and then. But if a high schooler told me this, I would want to choke slam them. But they were looking for a goal planner online and had a drop down menu, and it just had male and female. And they said, no option for those who do not subscribe to the outdated gender binary. If I had a high schooler tell me that genders are outdated, I would choke slam them.
Yeah.
I could not put up with it.
So in my sex ed job that I do, we talk about having a healthy marriage, because statistically, people who are married actually are better at making better financial choices. They're actually better in their sex life, and they're better in their health life. Legit, there's statistics that back all that up. And it amazes me when you still got these. We never mention anything about homosexuality because that's not our program. I mean, why should we have to mention that? And there's always kids that bring it up. And even with STDs, they'll bring up the whole, why you gotta push your church agenda? Mind you, we're in this public school. We can't bring faith into this at all. And so I'm like, okay, let me just step back. Do you think trichamaniasis cares if you're a guy and a guy or a girl and a girl? No, trichamaniasis doesn't care. You can have whatever marriage thing you want, but let me just tell you right now, two male lions can't make any baby lions. I'm just saying. And they do argue. You just can't feed into it. You just kind of move on.
I can't deal with that.
They do try to push those battles a little bit, and you just have to kind of go, okay, what's really going on? Like, what are they dealing with, and what are they going through? And you can't feed into the argument. And then you got the kids who say the inappropriate things just to, like, make you trip
just
up.
Just to see what happens.
Yeah, I can't say this on the podcast, but I did have a kid that one time said something, and I just kind of said something back, and I'm like, I'm going to get fired. Because I'm just like, I know everything.
We've all said things we should have got fired for.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking if my boss wasn't there, I was happy.
I'm thinking of what John Travolta used to say in Welcome Back, Kotter. In your ear with a can of beer. He'd say that in high school
That's a good
class.
John Travolta. That's not bad.
Up your nose with a rubber hose.
You're dating yourself, Mike.
I know.
Yeah.
She doesn't have any idea.
I know.
No,
I don't either.
No.
I've never heard that.
You ever watched Welcome Back, Carter?
Never heard of it.
No.
So tell us about the youth program. It's your infomercial time.
Oh, well, the youth program is for youth.
When do you meet? Are you looking for helpers that show up part time and consider themselves?
There's certain helpers I have on a list to know that when they say they want to help, they don't really mean it.
What list?
So,
is it one person?
Yeah.
She's got a color-coded list.
I do have a color code. I
It's
do.
got one color.
So pre-COVID, we always had Friday night was Club 612. It was open gym, and it was 6 to 9. We gave a devotion, but that was like our outreach to try to bring kids in. And there'll be different seasons when we had a big basketball crowd that would come in. They wouldn't actually come to church, which broke my heart, but they would always come for basketball, and we would still give them the devotion and stuff. And then Sunday nights were our youth service. COVID happened, and we realized in those few months that we didn't get to have services. We were doing things on Instagram and online and stuff. That the middle schoolers went and hid under rocks somewhere. And the high schoolers were like thriving, like they were wanting to like come out and socialize. And it just really hit me that like if we were going to do anything ever to separate the middle schoolers and high schoolers, it was this time. And so I kind of said it was the COVID relaunch model, and I've kept it that way because I feel like the middle schoolers need something on their level and the high schoolers need something on their level. And so Friday nights is our middle school night for from 6 to 8 p.m. It's in the gym, but we also have we have an hour of free play, and then we have an hour of actual like message. You've got your worship, your Bible study, that kind of stuff. And I've been doing several curriculums. One of them was like just how to be a Christian. The other one was like, how do we pray? It was like 6 weeks on how to pray. One was 6 weeks on how to worship. And just to basically introduce them to these concepts they probably don't really know. I mean, they may have gotten in children's church, but you got to be thinking, we get a lot of kids that don't ever come through children's church. They just come from the schools, and we get them at that age, and they're brand new to everything. So then the high schoolers, they're Sunday nights, and same concept. We don't give them quite as much free time just because we do a little bit more with them. And because I want more altar time if possible. Not that middle schoolers aren't there yet, but they're still looking at me like, what's going on? So the high schoolers, they're kind of used to it. But I didn't want to get rid of Club 612. So we have the first Friday of every month is Club 612. And I try to theme it to make it fun. So we've done... one Friday night, we did just recently, glow in the dark, capture the flag in the gym. Had no injuries until the end. I was so proud of myself.
Wow.
Did anybody figure out how to cheat in that game?
Yes. The whole game.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Hamlin wasn't involved though. So,
Probably one of his understudies.
but that was a lot of fun. We had a lot of kids show up. Club 612 is still our outreach. We'll have so many kids who don't normally come to church come to that. And I'll have kids in the schools who are like, when are you going to do another one? When are you going to do another one? I'm like, well, you can come today and just see how awesome it is when it's not just that, you know? And so I'm still working on it. But then one Sunday a month, we do what I call Amplify United. And I bring the 6th through 12th grade together because I feel like it's important for the 6th graders to see the older and the 7th graders to see the high schoolers worship and actually really worship and see that altar time. And again, I try to theme it. So like May, I did my testimony and I acted out my high school years, and I have my journals from my high school years that I act out from, and I read those
Was it like
journals.
a Saved by the Bell skit? You got Slater and...
Saved by the Bell was before my time.
Oh, that's right.
Did you consider yourself Kelly Kapowski or?
Like I said, before my time.
Oh yeah.
Before my time. So I don't even know who you're referring to. But yeah, so we desperately need, like, because I'm trying to train the leaders I have now, like, what I'm telling them, it may seem silly, but I'm planning for God to just provide this giant harvest because of all the things that we're doing in the school. I mean, we are making connections, and I feel like the church is going to boom here soon. I feel like a revival is going to break out in the young people. I had a lady in the church the other day come up to me, and she's like, I just see all these prophecies about the young people. And I said, the young people are the ones, because they're hungry for something, and they just don't know what they're hungry for. And I just pray that we are the ones that they come to, and I don't blow it when they get here. But I feel like everything I'm doing, all this labor, I can sit here and go, man, I suck at my job because I don't have 100 students over there in this gym. Or I can sit here and go, God's doing something, and I'm planting all these seeds, and it's going to come soon. And so that's just what I kind of hold on to, is that everything that I do in the schools is the seeds that are being planted for them to come. And I'm getting more and more. I have a young lady that she's only come a couple times, but how long was she here last night? She was here. We had the baccalaureate service last night, and she and her sister stayed until the very end. They didn't leave till almost 9 o'clock.
They were here like 4.
Yeah, they were here at 4, way before everybody else, and then they didn't leave until like I made them leave because I'm like, honey, I'm tired, we gotta go. But they had all these questions. They were just questions, just not like, nothing in particular, just questions, And this girl now is going to be a part of my Oxford missions trip next week, And this is a girl who 6 months ago had a label on her. I'm not going to lie. Students called her a certain way, and she acted a certain way, and I saw her social media, and I'm like, okay. So a label was put on her, but I'm sitting here thinking, all right, God, what are you doing? What is going on in this girl's life? And you put her in my hands, and so let me see what I can do, to really connect with her. And she's really has been kind of glued to my hip the last few times that she's come. And it was ironic. She was here Friday night for Club 612, and she was talking about her boyfriend, and she's like, Miss Amanda, they break up like 30 times in the last 4 months, and she's like, I keep telling God, give me a sign, and then we break up. I'm like, but I don't want that sign. I'm like, baby, if God gives you a sign, you need to listen. And would you know, this is how God works, right? Literally 5 minutes later, he sends her a text. We need to break up. I said, that is God, baby. If you don't know that ain't God, that is God. I'm sorry, I clapped in the mic. I said, that is God. I said, because you need to really sit back and focus on yourself. I mean, I'm just saying. She's like, this is not fair, Miss Amanda. I'm like, it just is what
she
it is.
She should have said, but you were married at engaged at 17.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say you feel like we're sitting on the edge of something about to happen, because it seems like right now in every facet of society and the world, whether it's economically or culturally or in the church, whatever, it feels like everybody is saying the same thing. In every facet of life, it's like something feels like it's going to happen soon, which is just, it's weird. I don't know. I know I'm young, but it's never felt like it is right now in everything.
My current struggle is like the children that like are so bored with the church. They're like, church is like whatever. And I'm like, I ain't got time for you. I mean, I do have time for them, but I'm really like, okay, I want to go after the people who people have labeled and said they're not going to ever want to do anything, but they had this inquiry about what is this that you've got, and so I'm sitting here like, okay, God, the few that are faithful right now that I keep telling them, you are my core. Like, God is using you, and we're discipling you right now, because I feel like when this gym busts open with teenagers, y'all are going to be the ones leading the pack. The way you worship, the way you pray, the way you do everything, you're going to be the ones leading the pack. And so, I've got a group of students right now that they are our worship team, and they come and they do our pre-service prayer at 5:15. They come, and I'm like, you're the ones. You're the ones. And so I've got probably like 6 to 8 that I would say is like the core of my high schoolers. And then but like these other kids, like I just had one comment today, well, my sister doesn't want to come to the event next week. And I'm like, you know what, if she don't want to work and be here, I don't care. I don't want her here. I mean, I just don't want to put up with it. If they don't want to be here, I'm not going to sit here and chase after them if they don't want to be here. I want to go after the ones who are like hungry for something, And so that's the struggle that I'm currently dealing with, if you're just curious, because I'm dealing with this complacency from the church kids compared to the ones who maybe have a bad life. They don't really know what church is, but they know they need something and they're missing something. So I'm hoping that I'm connecting the dots. You're missing God. That's what you're missing. And you need to connect with God, and let me show you how. And so that's what I'm working on. And that's why I love being in the schools, because I get to deal with all these kids. I have one teacher, he's like, Miss Amanda, I need you to bring your anointing oil. He's like, I need you to do this. And literally, I have a good relationship with this teacher now. And he's like, Amanda, can you take this kid out and talk to this one? And I'm like, okay. So I take out this kid, and I'm like, what's going on? Talk to me, da-da-da-da. And I really have like half a dozen kids that I'll sit there and deal with. Miss Amanda, I have this problem, da-da-da-da. And I'll deal with boys and girls. I'm like counseling on campus and stuff. And even the counselor at school, they're like, can you talk to this kid? I'm like, sure, let's do this.
Can you do my job for me? You seem to be doing it better.
You did call last week when they needed somebody.
Well, exactly. We had a young man that died last week, and he accidentally shot himself. And so they called us. I mean, they didn't call us specifically in the sense by like they didn't use our number, but they reached out to us because they know we know the students. And so I knew the young man that accidentally shot himself, and it was a tragedy. And he drove me nuts, but it's still a tragedy because he had so much potential. And but I knew a lot of kids who knew him. And one of our students in the youth group is like his cousin. Didn't even realize that, and so it was really upsetting to know that they were like that close, and they were upset. But the schools know we have a relationship with the students, and they're like, Miss Amanda, can you deal with this? Actually, excuse me, the teachers call me Miss Hahn. I'm not used to it. The teenagers call me Miss Amanda, but the adults say Miss Hahn, Miss Hahn, Miss Hahn. But anyhow, so I do a lot to counsel these students, and I just can't help but think that's God using me to connect the bridge to get them over here, hopefully. That's my goal.
What about, if you put age of people in church on a flow chart, you'd have the kids' church, and then it goes up to like the youth group, and then like around, I don't know, 20s to 35, there's nothing hardly.
Right.
And then it starts picking back up, as it goes. Why is there such a drop right after youth? Because youth is always vibrant. People are everywhere. I know people go off to careers and they go off to different lives, but they don't come back to church, or a good percentage of them.
My honest opinion is the students aren't taught authentic relationships with Christ. Like, they're not taught how to have that authentic relationship. So then they become independent, and then they like go live a life in the world, and they're like living it however they feel. They were told they can't do something. They're like, well, why can't I do something? And then they do it. Like, well, it's not so bad. I don't understand why it's so bad. And then they get involved. And then next thing you know, they have families. And then they go, oh, now I get it. I need to come back. We do this thing with in the STD class, one of it's about like how far will you go in a relationship, and we have it all the way down from like holding hands to kissing to like making out, you know, all that kind of stuff, to like full on sex.
Yeah, we used to call them bases.
Well, yeah, there's 14. This particular thing is called 14 stages of intimacy, and we'll tell.
There were not 14 bases.
Yeah, no, that's why it's called 14 stages, and we'll ask the students, okay, like how far would you go, and you'll be surprised, a lot of them will go like almost all the way down, like, and they'll be completely honest with us. They'll be like, yeah, we're gonna go out, but then we're like, okay. It's no girls too, because there's a lot of girls who are like, we are on bodies, we'll do what we want.
My body, my choice.
Right. And so we'll say, let's flip the script. What about your daughter? They're like, 0, stage 0. I'm like, why do you have this double standard for your future children than you do for yourself right now? And they're like, well, we just know how bad it is. I'm like, then why do you put yourself in that situation? Why do you do it? Why do you harm yourselves now, you know, and you know it's bad? And they're just like, because it's fun. I'm like, yeah, okay, until you get trichamaniasis.
But is it also, and I meant
Word
to
is
talk,
bouncing around in my head.
that
love
thing
saying
I spoke about earlier is, I think part of the problem is you'll find an audience, and when you find an audience, that automatically assumes it's accepted.
Right.
And so if you think about the girl that graduated at high school, the valedictorian, did you read that in the news? She gave her speech, and instead of giving her normal speech, she talked about it was in Texas because they just outlawed abortion, and in her speech is, and what if when I'm at college my contraceptive fails? What's the argument here, right?
You made the choice to have sex,
right?
That's the outcome.
If you start chipping away all this stuff, then yes, then that's why they can. Their reality is something that's not, because they can. There's somebody that thinks like them, whether they're gender whatever or homosexual,
right.
They'll find someone on TikTok that has 1 million views, so that person's homosexual, so it's okay to be homosexual. It validates. That's the word, validates.
So to answer your question,
is it right for us to not validate? Just sometimes, just off the basis of it's not right. I'm not going to validate what you're saying, and I'm going to choke slam you. No, but
Mike seems a little angry
but
tonight.
Like, so we're dealing with that, and that's why that generation that you're talking about, that age gap, they're missing from the church, because they're out there following their influencers, or they're getting an audience. Like the speaker last night said, Coach Tucker, he's like, you get a stage at some point in your life where you get to be the person that everybody's looking to. And what are you saying? What are you speaking into their lives? Is it something that's going along with the cultural trends, or is it something that's lines up with God's word? Are you going to point on Jesus, or are you going to point onto the, homosexual agenda or the abortion agenda, And so it is, they're out there searching it, but I think it all falls back to whether or not we're doing a good job now discipling them. And I think it's from baby up. I mean, I really do feel like children's ministry starts it, and then youth ministry continues it, and then we have to transition them. I think we do a terrible job transitioning the young people. I think we do a terrible job transitioning them from children's church to youth, because in all churches there's a big culture shock. Let's just be honest. Children's church is completely different than youth. No matter what church you go to, children's church is puppets, youth is fog machines. We don't do fog machines, by the way.
But you got lasers.
We don't have lasers.
I'm just kidding.
We don't do fog machines because it causes asthma attacks and stuff. And who needs fogs for Jesus? Okay,
Yes.
I don't think that's necessary.
But if Jesus would have had a fog machine and lasers when he did Sermon on the Mount, think how many followers he would have got.
Yeah,
he would have got. What's it called on Instagram when you get the check mark?
There's a cloud that followed him around in the desert, Josh, and they didn't.
I was going to say, if he wanted fog, God would have just kind of sent it down.
I always think about that every time I see one of these things. But what about what's the verse that says, raise up a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't depart from it. It doesn't say they won't depart from it. It says when they're old.
Right.
And so there might be a time where I know I was an idiot. Still was where you just think you know so much, and like, oh, church, I tried that doesn't work. I can see that kind of thought process, and then when they get older and they're paying taxes, they're like, you know what, church wasn't so bad.
I had a student ask me last night, she's in 9th grade, and she said, Miss Amanda, have you ever had a student that didn't want to come to church and it radically changed their life? And I'm like, I mean, it's probably several of them that I probably can't name, because I hope to God that I've got some people to come to church and then they got saved. That's my job description, right? To get kids to church.
Well, there probably was. I mean, if that was me, I would internalize it. I wouldn't go up and hug you and high five you.
Right. My only success story
major
that
impact on my
I
life,
can
but
say
you
is
wouldn't
a
know
success story is like Ronald, because Ronald will tell you, for some reason we were friends on Facebook. I don't ask to be friends, so he must have asked to be friends with me because I don't try to do it with boys. Like, just, you have to be, if you want to be my friend, you can ask and I'll accept it. But I'm not out there like, hey, little boy. I just ain't doing that. I ain't doing that.
That was so creepy.
I ain't doing it.
Let me tell you about lice on the eyelashes.
And so, dude, Ron will tell you, like, his stuff on Facebook at the time was just pure garbage. And he showed up to church one night, and I don't really know. They had a walk connection. So they had a connection with our church from walk, but he wasn't a youth member. And for whatever reason, I was preaching that night, and for whatever reason, God put it on my heart to just call him out. Now, I didn't say Ronald Paris from the podium, but I looked him in the eyeball, and what I was saying was to him. And like, that conviction was so strong in his heart. Like, he will tell you today that, he is so thankful that I called him out, that we knew it was the Holy Spirit, but he's so thankful that I listened to the Holy Spirit and I called him out. And it was that changed his life to realize, oh my goodness, I'm living this double life, pretending to be Jesus friendly, and then at school and on Facebook it's a garbage fest, So then of course camp saved his life. Camp is where he radically got saved, and he'll tell you all this. But he really does look up to me and Daniel, and just tells us that we're the reason that, because of our brashness and just being very authentic. Yeah.
His dad does too.
And his dad just yesterday at baccalaureate, because Ronald's younger brother is graduating this year, and his dad was just saying that he thanks us so much for doing everything, in his life. And of course, we know it's all God. We don't want to sit here and take the credit for everything, but I just thank God for using us to be authentic, And so Ronald's this big boy, and he's doing these great things, and he still calls us his family, and that's to me the world, where we've done something right, but you can't overlook the good kids. Skylar's a good kid that a lot of people overlook because she's always been a good kid, but that's what's God doing in her life and how God's used her, and she's a bus kid. Her parents don't come to church, and so you just look at these kids and you just think, okay, how have I changed their lives? How have God used me to change their lives? And I keep going back to being authentic, and then pointing them to this, and not being afraid to share things with them, and being honest. I think that's also very important. They get so many churchy answers that they don't understand. They'll ask the question, and then they'll get a church answer, and so you got to be real.
Don't use church words.
All right, as we wrap this up, any last questions for the youth pastor?
Josh keeps asking questions. That's all I gotta say.
I know.
Yeah, I don't think so. Was there anything we didn't hit on that you wanted to cover tonight?
No, I just talk.
I got a question. I got a friend. It just made me think of my friend, and she is not the church type. But I invited her to church actually several times, and I think this last time she might come. But she is the kind who will drop the F-bomb 4 times in a sentence. And she's not the church type, but she talks about how lonely she is and how empty she is and how she has no friends. And well, all my friends are at church. Come to church. Is that a good reason to bring somebody to church?
I think any reason's a good reason.
You get them here, and then God does it. You're not playing God. You're just doing your part of inviting them, and then they will come, and God will do His part of saving them. That's how it works.
And as the church family, we have to connect with her, regardless of the F-bombs.
Well, let me just put it out there that there's a lot of church people that
told
like
her
to
keep
use
the
cuss
F-bombs
words
down if you can. When you get here.
I may have said this before on a previous podcast, but there was a podcast I was listening to, and they were talking about how they were inside their church, and a new person come in, had never been there before. He sat down at the table, and one by one, people started coming up and sitting at the table and talking to the guy, but he was dropping F-bomb after F-bomb after F-bomb. And so one by one, each person got up and started leaving the table until there was only one guy left. And he started thinking about it later, and he's like, what is worse, this guy using the F word multiple times, or these believers abandoning their call because he's using a word?
Right.
He's like, what do you think God looks at worse?
So one of my favorite professors at Southeastern, he just retired this year, Dr. Hackett, he shares his story. He was a hippie, surfer boy hippie, back in the day, yeah. And he got radically saved. but he was a pot smoking hippie and everything else. And he shares when the pastor of the church came
Sounds
for a
like he
visitation.
had a lot of fun before he got saved.
He shares a story in class where he was saved,
Cut that out, baby.
but he didn't know that he weren't supposed to smoke pot anymore, and he didn't know that he wasn't supposed to look at porn anymore, and he didn't know all these things. And he attributes his growth to this pastor that came to a visitation, and this pastor sat down, and this pastor could have judged him, could have labeled him, could have done all these things, you hypocrite, but instead this pastor just lovingly taught him the right way and just continued to just like shape and help mold him.
Didn't he offer the pastor a joint?
He did. He offered the pastor some stuff, and the pastor's like, no, as a believer,
was it regs or was it like good stuff? Like, what are we talking here?
Yeah. And so, and he often says, because that pastor handled it with love and grace, that's why he obviously stayed a Christian, and then he's one of the like amazing men of God, like very brilliant men of God. Dr. Hackett, he's a doctor. I mean, he's got so much knowledge and stuff, and just a humble guy. He's like 4 feet tall, but it's not the point.
I think Christians are supposed to like correct other Christians, like, look, this is disrespectful, or this is this, but it has to be done. You have to love the person you're going to correct.
They have to be
if
able
you
to
don't
receive it.
genuinely,
way.
if you don't genuinely love them, then you don't need to be the one to do it.
And it all goes back to having an authentic relationship. Like, even if you don't have like a best friend relationship, but they know you're authentic and you actually care about the well-being, they'll receive it better than if they just think you're a labeled judgmental Christian. And so you've got to have that authentic like I said, relationship with the person, be in their lives, actually know their name. And in schools, I'll call these kids out by name. I don't need to know their name per se, but I'll call them out by name, and they're like, how do you know my name? I'm like, I know you.
It's on the
like,
roll sheet. I'm
well, but just the fact that like I'll call them from across the cafeteria. I'll just call them out, and they're just amazed that I remembered their name, and it's just the fact that somebody knows their name is the world to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these kids are the forgotten ones. Like I said, the Davids that nobody even remembers that they're out there. And nobody wants to really look at them because they're too young or they're insignificant. And so I'll call their name and I'll say, hey, what's up? And then they drive me crazy with texting me all the time. I've got one right now. Bless his heart. For whatever reason, he likes me enough to talk to me. And the counselors say, please talk to him and get his grades up. And kid texts me all the time. That's what we do for ministry.
When we go back, you said people in the church cuss. I want to go on record to say Josh is wrong. I did not call those boys the F-bomb.
No,
I did
it
not.
was even better.
No, I did. I just
it was
clear
better
that up.
than
I know
that.
we did it on a past podcast.
You said the word FN.
Oh, okay. I said that.
Hilarious to me.
Right. Okay. I did. See, I was polite about it.
Is that bus trip? Is that the one that you go on a bus?
It was a Sozo
He
trip.
was so bad. Oh,
It was a
my
camping trip at Sozo.
I've heard all sorts of stories, but like even some of our leaders in the past, I'd be like, you can't say that. Like the Galatians says, to not use, unwholesome talk, and here you are like blah blah blah, and you're like right in front of the children. How are we supposed to expect the children not to say words? And then you're
Are you
saying
talking
words.
about me? Because I've done that before.
I was not talking about you in this particular thought.
I remember being on the
but-
church bus one time, and
I'll remember this
where the
story.
church bus, there was like a shelf above my head, and I stood up and I hit that shelf, and I wanted to cuss so
You
bad.
did cuss.
And there was a kid who looked at me and laughed, and it made me want to cuss even more. And so I got out the bus, and I walked behind the bus, and I just let a good cuss word out. I felt so much better.
What exactly is a
I
good
held
cuss
it in.
word?
It held, well,
What is a good cuss word, Josh?
I think it was
how
like
you say it.
poopy pants or something.
Poopy pants,
Yeah, I
okay.
think that's what it was. But whew, it felt so much better.
I actually have students in school be like, we know you cuss, Miss Amanda. I'm like, I really don't. Like, the worst I say is crap. Like, I don't cuss. Like, I just feel like you can't.
I'm
like,
getting better, by the way. Everyone listening.
If you can't come up with a
I used
better
to be a
word than a
construction
cuss
worker.
word, then you need to work on your vocabulary.
Pastor Amanda, we thank you so much for
Well, thank you for putting up with
coming
me.
and telling
I just like to
us.
talk.
The youth does have 2 mission trips that they do, 2 missions.
We have various projects. This year it's been, because of COVID, we can't go out of country, but we do one right now local called Oxford Missions. 2022 we'll do Miami missions and hopefully El Salvador or something similar like that again, because we've been to El Salvador in the past. And phenomenal trip. I believe in missions trips wholeheartedly. I think it's important for them to really see like the fact that we are so blessed here.
Yes.
And just going to Miami shows them that we are so blessed here, because Miami's a whole different lifestyle down there.
Yeah.
And so right now coming up, we have Oxford Missions, which is local, but it's still serving the community. We go and do stuff at the youth center and help with VBS, and we all know working with children is a project.
Awesome. Well, thank you for listening.
All right, y'all, we just want to thank you for listening to our podcast today. The Whatsoever Things podcast is just a group of folks sitting around talking about their faith, and it does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the leadership of Oxford Assembly of God. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. You can subscribe in whatever your favorite podcast application is. And if you'd like to find out more information about our church, you can visit our website at www.oxfordag.org. That's oxfordag.org. We'll see you next time.